Going to begin, and I'm just going to do a quick introduction and throw it over to Arturo. Good afternoon. Welcome to our third day, our final day of our annual Student Leadership Summit. I'm Lori Oldham with the Office of Student Affairs, and today we have our very own SACNAS chapter at San Diego City College here to present their Environmental Justice Forum. San Diego Community College District and San Diego City College community are extremely proud what they and their advisor, their illustrious advisor, Dr. Levy, continue to accomplish at an award-winning level, both statewide and national. Without further ado, please allow me to hand it over to Arturo Baza. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Diani, is there a way you can bring up the slides? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It is an honor for us SACNAS to be here again on this platform. We are always excited to come and show support to our community, our college, and most importantly, bring awareness and help empower students. Next slide, please. With no further ado, I would like to welcome up to the stage 2020 SACNAS Chapter of the Year to please come forward and introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Austin Portnez, and I'm the SACNAS Vice President.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anaí Mendez Lozano, and I'm the SACNAS Treasurer.
Hi, I'm Shalaya Naomi Webb, and I'm the Secretary of SACNAS.
Hello, my name is Diani Melgarejo, and I am the current president of our SACNAS chapter.
Hi, I'm Professor Levy, and I am the faculty advisor for the SACNAS chapter.
Hi, and I am Arturo Archie Baza, 2-year former president of this chapter. And I want to take a moment and give a big shout out to me for her hard work, our patience and enthusiasm in this challenging times, and how she is developing her skills as a great leader and carrying the torch to steer this club to new horizons. And of course, to all the SACNAS that are here today, very much thank you. Next slide, please. We would like to begin our presentation and ask all of you that are watching this broadcast to share with us in the chat, what is your definition when you hear the term environmental justice? So take a couple moments to tell us in the chat, what is your definition, please? Okay, I'm seeing climate justice. Okay, yeah, very good. Anybody else? I would like to ask some of my SACNistas to please come forward and share a little bit about what they think environmental justice is.
When I think of environmental justice, I think about being aware of our environment and ways we can protect it and maintain it.
When I think about environmental justice, I think of the ways that the planet gives so much to us and ways that we can give back to our planet and keeping it in equitable balance.
Nice, nice. I see a variety of responses and I like it. And before I go and really give you the definition of environmental justice is, I want to show you all a quick video. So if we can go to the next slide and play the video, please.
will not make the Netherlands home.
If we want to protect our societies, if we want to stop the criminal trafficking gangs from benefiting as they are, we must stop the boats coming.
Squads of riot police pushing ever deeper into the jungle camp.
If Europe thinks they have a problem with migration today caused by the Arab Spring and what's happened in the Middle East, wait 20 years and see what climate change drives people out of Africa, the Sahel especially, and we're talking now not just 1 or 2 million, 10 or 20, and they're not going to South Africa, they're going across the Mediterranean.
Very simple terms, in the years preceding 2011, which was the year of the Arab uprisings, there had been terrible drought conditions in North Africa and the Levant, and this had particularly hit the Syrians very badly. As a precursor, it was one of the factors that led to the conditions that made Syria explode. I think there's no doubt the drought played a major role. The consequences of the Syrian war, most notably the incredible outmigration of Syrians to neighboring countries and then ultimately to Europe, which has caused the worst crisis in Europe since World War II, all can be traced backwards to some extent to, a drought that occurred in the Middle East between 2004 and 2011.
10 meters of sea level rise, I think would displace roughly 500 million, about 500 million people. And Syria has been less than 1 million refugees, 750,000 about, into the EU. Less than 1 million have shaken the EU to its core. Multiply by 500 and tell me there are not going to be any security issues.
It is places where people are poor, where the climate is likely to be the most severe, where the changes will be the most severe, that we need to look. Southeast Asia is certainly part of that. Arid countries, the Middle East, South America. We've not even begun to explore the challenges in Latin America.
Some would equate it to the ship, the battleship that's got the momentum. And if you don't start to stop it now, that momentum's just going to keep it going for quite a while. Even if you start now to stop climate change, we have to start now.
What we're talking about here is an existential threat to our civilization in the longer term. In the short term, it carries all sorts of risks as well. And it requires a human response on a scale that has never been achieved before.
Wow, I just want to say that video is very strong, definitely very interesting. It has a lot of topics that defines environmental justice. So I want to go ahead and re-ask the same question that we asked before the video. What do you think when you hear the term environmental justice? And I want to give a space in the chat to go ahead and give us. I see advocacy for all communities on Earth. Also, somebody brought about the Flint, Michigan, the water contamination. Yeah, those are very, very good. I want to open it up for any other SACNAS that want to define a little bit more now that they saw the video, like what do they think? And then also talk about deforestation and rainforest. Yeah, okay, yeah, very, very good.
I guess for me, environmental justice is the fair treatment of people and nature.
Okay, anybody else? Those are very great responses and key points that you all bring. And don't think that you're wrong just because your definition differs from everybody else, because environmental justice is a very big, broad subject that is sadly has been forgotten. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Here is a quote that I want you all to hold on in the back of your mind throughout this presentation. And it's from 1984 Nobel Peace Prize recipient and South Africa's human rights activist, Desmond Tutu. So I'll give you a second to go ahead and read this, but keep it in your mind as we go through this presentation. Okay, now here is the formal definition what environmental justice is. The United States Environmental Protection Agency, in other words, EPA, defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement for all people. So if we look at fair treatment, it tells us that not only one group of people should be responsible for environmental consequences. And if we go into meaningful involvement, it tells us that everyone has a say in anything that goes in or around their environment. Okay, next slide, please. So I would like to pause here for a moment, and you might be asking yourself, why am I even here? What am I getting out of it? Or why is it important? Because definitely your time is very valuable, and I want to respect that. And I want to share quickly why environmental justice is important in a definitely short definition. One reason is because we don't have another planet. And you might argue, well, what about Mars, right? But it's not habitable for us yet. So we have looking for like more years to happen. So we want to take care of the planet that we live here on Earth. Second, environmental justice affects all of us, from our health, social issues, climate issues, and agriculture as well, and with other natural phenomena that happen here. So can we go to the next slide? Next slide, please. And I would like to bring up our first presenter, Austin, up to the stage. And I want to ask Austin, what do you think are some global environmental injustices that have been going on or are currently emerging in this world? Austin?
Thanks, Archie. I'm definitely going to be getting into that. But first, I want everybody to take a look at this map here. This map shows the countries that have some of the largest carbon output. And this also think about this little blurb down here. It says countries with the least carbon footprint are being most affected by the output from countries with greater carbon footprint. And you'll see why in just a second. You'll see what the consequences of that are in just a second. Next slide, please. So global impact. First things first. The very first people who are going to be affected by climate change are the poor. In the video, you can see people being displaced in the warning call of how big of a problem the climate change can cause. These people are definitely shouldering a disproportionate share of the negative consequences of climate change. You could also hear the government leaders who demanded that they send boats of these people, victims themselves, back to the land that they can no longer live in. This sets up a humanitarian catastrophe. This will eventually happen if the clock is allowed to run out, and we are already running behind. The people of Bangladesh have been living at what is considered to be the ground zero for climate change. Scientists believe that rising temperatures is causing record sea level rise, and melting glaciers and Indian water policies is causing unprecedented riverbank erosion. Their people are being displaced by the millions away from their homes due to this riverbank erosion that you can actually see in the photo in the top right here. And this puts a huge strain on population centers and the country's infrastructure. And if you see on this map to the left, you can see the blue pieces that show where the country has been is flooded. And this is just from July 19th to the 24th of this year. These are the places that were underwater in that country. And some islands in Bangladesh have lost 90% of their original landmass in just the last 2 decades. You're beginning to see what that map a few slides ago was talking about. Most of the people in Bangladesh live in houses of mud and tin, and they live off the land. But the people of Bangladesh are paying the price for climate change. Next slide, please. We also cannot assume that our own governments have our best interests in mind. Take Haiti, for example. Widespread deforestation in Haiti has led to the flooding and dramatic rates of erosion. The deforestation is because of the common reason that large swaths of forests are usually cleared for: agriculture and the planting of cash crops. The picture on the left shows a NASA satellite photograph of the border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. There's a stark difference in the amount of greenery that is seen between the two countries. And in 2004, Hurricane Jeanne made landfall at the eastern tip of the Dominican Republic, as you can see in the top right. In the right picture on the side there. However, the flooding from Jeanne killed a reported 19 deaths, Dominican Republic side, but an estimated 3,000 people were killed in flooding due to the same hurricane, even though that the hurricane didn't even make landfall on their country. The World Health Organization classifies around 65% of Haiti's population that live in poverty, which makes it the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Again, the poor are already shouldering the burden of climate change right now, today. And these issues only exacerbate the issue of climate change. Much like in Haiti, the rainforests of the Amazon are being deforested to use as lands to raise livestock or grow feed for livestock or cash crops. And the Amazon rainforest stores about 1/4 of the carbon that is absorbed by trees globally each year. And it is estimated that the rainforests currently store about a decade's worth of carbon today. And deforestation will release that carbon into the atmosphere, not to mention harming biodiversity that could have untold consequences on ecological balance. Next slide, please. You might be thinking, Austin, these issues are huge. What can I do? Well, you just get involved. The best step in starting to attack climate change is the very first one. And this forum is a great start if you're just starting to understand how climate change affects our planet. And how certain groups of people are already feeling the damages that climate change is causing our world. Our actions in the industrialized world are having measurable consequences to real people right now. I implore you to reflect on your own habits and use the QR code on the left or typing in the link on the left to see what the effect of your carbon footprint has on the planet and how many planets we would need in order to sustain population of people who share your habits. Or if you would like to, as well, on the right QR code, take our our environmental justice pledge to start to take the very first step in the attack against environmental injustices. Thanks, Archie.
Yeah, thank you, Austin. Wow. I really appreciate the passion to bring up global issues, especially when you were talking about the 90% loss of mass on those islands due to sea level rising. Wow, it is scary. I cannot imagine myself living in those islands. Very. Next slide, please. We started globally. Now let's go locally. I want to bring up Diani and ask if they can bring up insight on how environmental justice plays a role here in San Diego. Diani?
Thank you, Archie. So to discuss the environmental changes on a local level, I'm going to share some data from a report called San Diego's Changing Climate. The San Diego Foundation published a focus study projecting climate changes in San Diego County by the year 2050. There are a lot of points to the study, so today I'll just focus on two: hotter climate and sea level rising. On the top right graph, you'll notice some zigzag lines with some 2 black bars around the 2050 mark, excuse me. So the red zigzags represent the upper range of temperatures if global emissions continue to increase. The gold lines represent the lower range of temperatures if global emissions are reduced. The black bars are showing the range where we can expect our temperature to be by the year 2050. So the average change will be between 1 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. For context, a 5-degree Fahrenheit increase is 50 times faster than the temperature change that occurred when the ice ages receded, which was about 2 degrees Fahrenheit per 1,000 years. An easier visualization of these changes on the bottom right shows the expected temperature change in our neighborhoods. And as the temperature is increasing, we're also looking at drastically rising tides. The top right chart shows a projection of sea level rise in inches. By 2050, we're looking at an increase between 12 to 15 inches. So what does that mean for San Diego? Our favorite beaches and communities are at risk. Imperial Beach, Coronado, Mission Beach, La Jolla Shores, Del Mar, and Oceanside. So how can we predict these changes exactly? The king tides, or the special super high tides that occur from a celestial gravitational alignment, are usually 1 to 2 feet higher than the average ocean tides. There's actually a king tide event this Sunday to Monday. And these king tides are natural occurrences, but serve as a very good approximation for what we can expect for our future ocean behavior and our community's capacity to withstand it. The bottom line is, these changes are inevitable, but they can be reduced in extremity. These are a few things we can do to help curb this drastic nature of these changes. We can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by reducing car usage, minimizing trips, and not idling for extended time. We can find a local organization that speaks to our interests, volunteer our time, and invest in the health of the community. And we can volunteer at our local parks and beaches and clean up trash and debris. And I have a list here of different organizations that you can get involved in. Thank you, Archie.
Thank you, Danny. Wow, that is scary. How first, if you put in perspective, we went from globally to locally, like now it's affecting my family. So it's crazy how climate change can be, you know, like environmental justice is important. So thank you for this list of local organizations. If you want to get active, definitely reach out, you know, help the cause. It doesn't hurt to ask. Okay, so now I want to go to the next slide, but once we go to the next slide, I want to take a moment and pause here to give our viewers a chance to absorb and break down this information. As already mentioned before, environmental justice is a big topic, and we're not going to be able to cover all 360 degrees of it. But we SACNAS are passionate activists that are here caring for one another and believe that science has definitely many answers. As a recap, we have talked about global and local issues, and briefly an introduction about why environmental justice is important. So how about if we go to a more personal level and we go more into like what is it going to do with public health? So I want to bring back Danny on stage and ask, how does environmental justice looks when we talk about public health?
Thank you, Archie. So the impact of environmental justice is not limited to the ecological changes in our habitat. These adverse effects in our habitat are reflected in human health. Our bodies work in an equilibrium, a sort of balancing act to keep things relatively the same. When we get too hot, our bodies sweat to cool us down, and when we're cold, we shiver to warm up. So every effect on our body has a physiological counterbalance, keeping us healthy and our inner systems functional. Our Earth has a similar equilibrium, except we as humans are not necessarily immune to it. As the air becomes increasingly polluted, our oceans acidified, our weather hotter and more unpredictable, our human bodies are absorbing that damage too. Let's consider air quality. We in California have been enduring wildfires this past year, and the particles from the smoke cause increased exposure to allergens, which trigger increased activity and immune response. Down the road, this could lead to an increased risk of heart disease, respiratory illnesses, and worsened allergy-related illnesses. Exposure to poor air quality will increase the likelihood of these illnesses manifesting in one's health. So according to the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, the PM stands for particulate matter, a term for the solid particles and liquid droplets that are found in the air. So when we're talking about PM2.5, we're talking about fine inhalable particles that are 2.5 micrometers in size. So if you take a look at the bottom left photo, it's like a scale of human hair. So human hair is about 70 micrometers in diameter. So it's 30 times larger than the largest fine particle we can inhale. If you could see the human hair scale, there's a blue ring around it with a couple of those blue circles. And then inside of those are the pink circles. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about breathing in particles. So when we're looking at the top left chart here, we're looking at the density of PM2.5 pollution throughout the mainland US. So notice that the more dense places are darker in color, like Southern California. Now take a look at the bottom chart. And this is a map of the quantity of reported COVID-19 related deaths per 1 million according to geographical location. So notice the strong correlation between the air quality and the mortality rates. And it makes sense. If folks are breathing in polluted air, they're more likely to have compromised immune systems from the constant irritation. And you can even go a step further and consider that environments with less clean air quality would have more impacted healthcare systems, given the increased need for healthcare. And keep in mind, this is just one example of how the environment affects public health. Our environment is the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, the products that we regularly use. Every part of our lives will impact our health. Today, we're taking a critical look at how these simple elements add up in our own bodies and our communities at large. I urge you to recognize how our environment and the health of our communities are interrelated. Our neighbors are depending on us to innovate solutions and lead a hopeful future. You can lead by example with these small actions. Please wear a mask in public to decrease the outbreaks of COVID-19 and show respect to your community. You can decrease excessive use of emission-heavy equipment, such as vehicles and air conditioning. And you can be an active lookout for environmental concerns in your neighborhood. This QR code on the left takes you to an app called Tell Us Now, allowing us to send photos to the County of San Diego and advocate for environmental justice in our communities. With these resources, you can be an agent of change. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Danny. I definitely agree on the take for action. I definitely wear on my mask. So I encourage you all to wear your mask. But like also the information that you bring us, when you put in perspective the size of the inhalable particle versus a string of hair, like that was incredible. Like how small an inhalable particle could be. So definitely encourage you to keep wearing a mask, okay? Thank you, Danny. Our next presenter that I want to bring up is Shalaya Naomi, and I wanted to ask her, according to the EPA, I know it has a definition of environmental consequence. Does it really apply to everybody or just a group or like in sections? Can you please tell us more about that, please?
Well, Archie, it does. So environmental injustice comes in a variety of forms, harming our earth and harming our people. As Diani noted, public health and the health of our planet is intertwined. The communities that bear the brunt of damaged public health are largely low-income communities of color. So environmental justice definitely doesn't, go by group. So instances of these have built up into a larger, uglier pattern known as environmental racism. Next slide, please. Environmental racism is the placement of low-income people of color in close proximity to toxic environments, such as areas with a lot of air pollution and decay. These placements affect the health of the people living there, sometimes for generations. Next slide, please. North Carolina is home to the second largest pork industry in the nation. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, this industry has pulled in about $2.9 billion a year. Ham comes at a huge cost, with 15.5 million tons of feces and waste produced per year. The waste produced per year has made the quality of life for the predominantly Black population of North Carolina's Duplin County decrease. The stench from the waste is so horrible that the residents can't even go outside their own homes and cook food. There's a cesspool with the pigs' bodily waste, and when it reaches capacity, it's sprayed in an area across the street where houses are. The residents have had to deal with an onslaught of viruses and diseases related from the farms, with people getting sick and even getting asthma. This problem has been ongoing since its first report in 1995. Next slide, please. Another example of environmental racism occurs right here in our city. Locally, our portside San Diego neighborhoods of Barrio Logan and National City have dealt with toxic emissions for years. These are neighborhoods where the majority are low-income Hispanic and other people of color. As a result, the risk of asthma and cancer is widespread. According to the EPA, residents experience asthma at more than twice the national average, with the risk of cancer being the 80th to 90th percentile. As of 2019, however, the Community Air Protection Program was mandated through California legislature in 2017. This program aims to target neighborhoods in California with the most air pollution and to tackle the problem. Data will be collected to understand the exact causes of where the majority of air pollution comes from. Our neighborhood will be part of one of many efforts to monitor the air and investigate ways to clean it. Next slide, please. So what can we do about environmental racism? Well, what we can do is bring awareness to these issues. The more informed we are, the better we can make decisions, from our purchases to who we vote for. While national elections are important, it's our state and local politics that can get programs caring for the environment up and running. There's a lot of power in our purchases. If we have the ability to do so, investigating where our meat purchases come from and buying ethically can help us do our part to not support companies that release toxic emissions into marginalized communities. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shalana Naomi. Yeah, definitely, you are correct. I lived in Bar Logan, like basically all my life, and there's a lot of industries there that definitely air pollute. But I'm really glad that the EPA is doing something about it for air quality. Not too long ago, I believe this year, there was an explosion in a Navy boat on the 32nd Naval Base. That definitely gave a lot of air pollution, and it lasted like I think for 2 weeks. So I definitely am happy that they're doing something about it. And thank you very much. Next up, I would like to bring up 2020 SACNAS Distinguished Mentor of the Year, Dr. Lorenza Levy, and I want to give her the space to put environmental justice in perspective for us by comparing San Diego and Los Angeles, and give us a glance of how men have made landscapes throughout these years. Dr. Lorenzo Levy, please.
Thank you, Archie. I just want to give my perspective of having been in San Diego on and off for 4 decades, and changes that I've seen, both positive and negative, and tie it back to what Shalaya Naomi was saying about our local elections and your local representatives. So when I was growing up as a kid in the 80s and the 90s in San Diego, East Lake, which you see in the top left corner, was wide open space. There was absolutely nothing there in terms of human development. It was what I remember as a child as the Great Wild West. I would see people from Rancho Santa Fe and Bonita Vista riding on their horses. I would see coyotes, even some foxes I used to see out there, snakes. I left San Diego for about 15 years. And when I came back, East Lake was the picture that you see in the top right. Not just a little bit of development, but a full city with shopping malls and mega movie theaters and everything you can imagine. And it happened so quickly. And my first thought was, when that expansion happened, were we careful to take care of the natural environment that was there before? Were those animals taken care of? Were our water resources taken care of? Where is the waste for these communities going? These are things that absolutely we have to take into account as we grow in and encroach on the natural resources. We have to care for how we tread on this land, right? We must tread lightly, and we must tread in a way that we don't cause damage that is, beyond the point of coming back from. And what I mean by that is, now look at the picture on the bottom there shows what LA City and LA County was when I was a kid. And I remember the smog, the air pollution was so bad, and students, kids in LA would have smog days from school. So school would be closed because the air quality was so bad that you just couldn't be outdoors. You couldn't do any outdoor activity. And in the last 20 to 30 years, really, there's been a lot of local policy that has come into play that has really cleaned up the air quality around Los Angeles. And we can implement these local policies that really do have an effect. I saw it in LA County, and I've seen it in San Diego as well. For example, Mission Bay. Mission Bay used to be heavily polluted. Now it still is polluted, and it's still not the cleanest water that we have in San Diego, but we've had a lot of policy implemented to make sure that we take care of our water and start to clean it up. So when we talk about voting, really what we talk about is voting at your local level, because these representatives are going to enact bills and turn into laws, things that are going to keep your local environment safe. We want to protect our marginalized communities. We want to make sure that they have clean air, clean water, as do all communities. So what you can do here is vote. And not only that, you vote in your local elections and you keep your elected officials accountable. You call them, you send them letters, you show up at meetings, you do what you can to make sure that your needs are being represented through your political body. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right, Dr. Lorenzo. Yeah, take action on voting. I just want to add something that you left me speechless. Definitely the comparison of East Lake. That was an incredible. Yeah, that just blew my mind right there. Like it went from like something that was natural wildlife to something that has already been colonized by man like that. That was just wow. But also, I want to ask, how do we take care of the lake? Do locals get involved with this? I want to transition to our next presenter, Anaí, and ask her, do you believe individuals can build a relationship with nature and help take care of it? If so, then how is this possible?
Hi, thank you, Archie. So far we have seen how climate change can affect us in different ways. We know that this is not an issue only affecting nature and people living in remote places, but it's an issue that affects all of us. Then why are we not acting more drastically to mitigate the effects of climate change? Why does it feel like we are not taking it seriously? So this is something that I had been struggling with for some time now, and I couldn't understand how people fail to see the urgency of all this. However, one day while reading a book called Transforming Psychological Worldviews to Confront Climate Change, I came upon Lieutenant Darley's model of helping. And this model actually helped me understand how we are all at different stages in processing this emergency that we call climate change. First of all, we have to notice the event. It sounds simple, but climate change, it's actually not that simple to notice. For example, it is hard to perceive the difference 1 degree makes, especially if that change happened in the course of 10 years. Then we have to process it as an emergency. For example, my dad used to live in Ohio, and I remember him being really happy one day during winter because it was unusually warm for the season. It hadn't snowed in a couple of days and it was sunny. I, of course, was horrified, but he was happy that the cold wind didn't hurt his face when he went out. So for him, the unusual weather was not a sign of an emergency. Therefore, it is not easy for people to treat something as an emergency if they are feeling happy about it. Stage 3 is feeling a personal responsibility, and I'll expand more on this in a few minutes. Finally, stage 4 and 5 is just deciding how to act and if you can even act at all. My husband is at this tier. If you ask him, he will say that there is nothing we can do to stop climate change, that we as individuals don't have the necessary tools. For him, individual efforts seem hopeless. Only the government has the power to make the necessary changes to fight against climate change. Feeling overwhelmed and like there is nothing we can do to stop the emergency is one of the reasons why people fail to act. I find this model really helpful because once I figure out what stage someone is in, then I can customize my message to address the concerns of that person I'm talking to, making my message more impactful. And this model can be applied to any emergency, not only climate change. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, I want to expand on stage 3, feeling a personal responsibility. For me, this is the most important stage because it's hard to advocate for something that we don't feel connected to. You might know about what is happening in Bangladesh or North Carolina, or what is happening to our wetlands in San Diego. However, just knowing about something does not mean that we are going to act. We need to have a sense of connection, and this is where having a relationship with nature becomes really important. So I want you to think and consider what is your relationship with nature or your local environment. And if you feel like you don't have one, then I want to encourage you to start developing one. You can engage with nature in many different ways. You can start by taking a walk in your neighborhood, maybe reading an article that talks about environmental racism, volunteering, as Diani mentioned earlier, or taking a sustainability class, or attending an environmental justice forum. You will probably notice that the more you start to engage and gain experience in something, the more invested you will become. Therefore, I want you to start thinking of humans and nature as a community that needs each other to thrive and survive, and not as separate entities. Next slide, please. So to finalize, I want to leave this quote by the environmentalist and philosopher Aldo Leopold that advocated for a better relationship between humans and nature. Thank you, Archie.
Thank you very much, Anaí, for bringing this awareness. It is very important that humans should have a relationship with nature, but the model that you bring is incredible. Like, I am definitely going to take use of those. Thank you for sharing with us that. So if we can go to the next slide, please.
There was a question in the chat for Anaí. So Anaí,
Okay.
can you please tell us what the name of that book is again, please?
Yeah, the name of the book is Transforming Psychological Worldviews to Confront Climate Change by Stephen Mayer.
Stephen Mayer, thank you.
And I can put it in the chat too.
Thank you. Go ahead, Archie.
Okay. So here's another quote from Jane Goodall. Okay, next slide, please. So with this concludes our presentation about environmental justice. Hopefully that this brought awareness to your surrounding areas and maybe other places that you are like when you travel, be aware about. So here's gonna be our email and also our Instagram if you want to get a hold of us. Okay. Now we're gonna open it to a Q&A. So go ahead and feel free to ask questions. Thank you.
I have a question, if I may. And I think it's to Diani's presentation, part of her presentation, where she was talking about climate change in our region, in particular, San Diego, Chula Vista, Santee, and those areas. Was the year 2050 that you placed as the time frame when, like, Chula Vista, the average temperature would be 91 degrees?
Yeah, so basically there was a study that was published by the San Diego Foundation, and it was just a summary of all of the research that they did, but they took a look at what we could expect for 2050. So that was just one of many examples of things that will change in our neighborhoods. The temperature is expected to increase by 5 degrees by 2050, and Chula Vista, San Diego, and I think there's one more like Oceanside or something. So like in between, like the average is between 1 to 5 degrees, but this is just like an average, and it's not including like what it will be like in the summer. So these things are kind of inevitable at this point, and we can, like I said before, we can kind of do some things to mitigate the severity, but at this point it's something that we just need to accept and be aware of, is that the changes that we've made to our environment are irreparable. So if anyone's interested, I can post a link in the chat to what this article is if anyone's interested in more information. There's information about the water shortages and many other environmental changes in our San Diego County. Did I answer your question?
Thank you. But some of the other interesting facts that all of you presented in your presentation really caught my attention. I think it was the overlaying of the continental United States with the density of the populations, and the comparison was extremely, I think it was, mind-boggling to me that those the contrast was so, you know, in line with what your presentation talked about. I thought about California in particular and the wildfires that we've had and how they continue to grow. So can anybody comment about like the wildfires that we've had this year in particular? I think it has set records beyond, because there's been so many of them and so many acres have burned in our state. Can somebody talk about that?
I actually, thank you, Lori. That's a great point. And I actually was wanting to talk a little bit more about federal land management and how that impacts all of us. So in California, most of our what we would call open land would be part of the national parks that is federally managed land. And recently, in past recent years, the federal management has really decreased in terms of funding and taking care of what needs to be taken care of. So the frequency of fires is affected by climate change because land is drier and there's more fodder. Also, the severity of the wildfires is affected by climate change because there's just more tinder. It's just drier. So not only do we need federal land management to make sure that these forests are maintained in a way to decrease the frequency, but we also need a global, bigger picture policy that is then going to protect these changes from taking place so quickly. I think one of the things I just wanted to mention was that while in the past we have had temperature climate fluctuations, they have taken place over many, many, many years, thousands of years, giving life an opportunity to evolve slowly into this change. The change that we're seeing now is so drastic, it's so quick, that there isn't time for us to evolutionarily change in order to adapt to these extremes. So I just kind of wanted to make note of that. Would anyone else like to piggyback on the forest fires?
I'll say just a short little something. When I was researching this topic for this presentation, I noticed one of the pictures that I had was actually taken when there was an incident of the Pacific Gas and Energy turned off the power for like millions of people like simultaneously in order to like prevent like anything worse from happening. But the point that I'm trying to make is we have to keep our industries accountable for their contribution to our changing climate. And like, even as, you know, we as humans can't necessarily evolve quickly to adapt to this. Like Dr. Levy was saying, we can change our policy and we can make sure that we're keeping in mind like the industries that we need to survive as humans are also being like socially responsible, and just making sure that we speak up with our vote and by our changing climate. So thanks.
Well, so that leads to, I'm just curious. So consider me a learned person, and I'm learning a lot through this presentation. Thank you very much. But so where is the California legislation in terms of holding these, like the power companies, right, accountable for the causing of, you know, even wildfires here in San Diego, and then having to do these, what do you call when they do a cut off the power because the conditions of a Santa Ana, for example, it could cause more damage and spread the wildfires even more so. What is our state, both locally and statewide, our legislators doing about, like, I know we're not going to go raking the leaves in the federal property like the current administration suggests, right? And it was the state's fault for not raking the leaves in the forest. And that is dumbfounded to me. But I am really curious as to what steps our local and statewide legislation, even nationally and globally, because what, as you said, unless it's done on a global scale, then it really doesn't get the impact that that the earth needs, that we need as human beings to continue to survive.
Thank you. Do any of my students want to take this? I've got plenty to say, but if any of my students want to take this, please do. Some of you might be more well versed in our local policies than I am. Okay, so thank you, Lori. Yes, we do need a global impact. And this is why it was so important for the United States, as such a big greenhouse emitter, to join the Paris Accord, the Paris Climate Accord, which we did. And then the current administration abruptly pulled us out of, which was a disaster, because the truth is we contribute to that carbon, to the greenhouse gases, really disproportionately compared to other countries. And so we must be a part of this globalized effort to implement policies to cut back on those greenhouse gases. The current administration has not only paused our forward movement, but has actually taken steps backwards into our forward movement that we had done. California has always been at the forefront of, for example, establishing mileage requirements, miles per gallon requirements for cars that is stricter than our federal guidelines. So I believe California has always tried to be at the forefront of that. And we are a big economic powerhouse, and we are a big social powerhouse, but we do need a federal, organized policies that would affect everyone in all states. And the innovation is there for companies. If you put restrictions on companies, they will find the innovations. For example, Hummer vehicles. They were big diesel engines, very big polluters. As popularity of that started waning, what Hummer did is they just released an all-new, fully electric Hummer. This is the way that a company takes a problem and adapts it and creates something. So if we give space for our industry to have that creativity, they will find a way. We have our SpaceXs, we have our Teslas, we have Hummers, we have even Ford and all of these companies really wanting to do the right thing, or maybe even not wanting to do the right thing, but follow the money. And if you put the money where it's at, they will follow. So it is absolutely necessary that we have an administration at the city, at the state, and at the federal level who is really wanting to put this forward, because the damage that we do today is going to be long lasting. So 4 years of damage is a lot of damage.
Yeah, Dr. Levy, I definitely would love to comment on some couple things you said. You said like there's the Teslas. Tesla is actually one of the smallest car makers out there, but it's valued almost more than most car companies that have been going since cars have been a thing, right? So you can see the public shift, right? The public shift, and maybe they just think Tesla is like some sort of like cash cow that they can, you know, go to and do whatever. But clearly there's some sort of, there's investment in that industry. So I think that the national messages are getting there. And I think it's important, like you said, to have a federal response, because I mean, believe it or not, like everybody likes to think that, or everybody has their own individuality, but when we get leaders from our country to say things, words mean things to people, basically. So having like a national, like unified, like stance on something is really, really important to even people who wouldn't normally even care about climate change. And as far as the Paris Accords go, our participation is not just saying we're going to change and do better by a certain year. We actually pay restitution to countries, the poor countries that are damaged by climate change. So if we're not part of the Paris Accords, we're not basically paying the restitution for the damages we're causing these countries. And that's really a big part of the Paris Accords I don't think many people know about.
Thank you, Austin. I wasn't actually aware of that. That actually makes the argument even stronger. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have anything else that they would like to share with us?
Well, the only thing that I would like to add is, as you mentioned, and I think Naomi also mentioned, is you also have power when you buy things. So if you have the ability to choose, you can do some little research and you can support the companies that you believe are doing the right thing for their people, for their employees, for nature. So that's another way where you can get involved. Obviously, voting is a big part of it. But for example, if you don't support like the deforestation in the Amazon, but you're buying products from a company that it's actually supporting that or driving the deforestation in the Amazon, then it's kind of contradictory. So if you can do some research and if you have the option to choose what you're buying, then I encourage you to look for options that are good for the people, good for the environment, and good for all of us. That's, you also have power there.
So if, as a layman person that I'm learning, what would I Google to look for companies? Because I have the buying power as the consumer and wanting to be conscientious now that my awareness is greatly raised by this presentation. What do I Google? What do I look for? Can you help our audience members that will also see this after it's done?
I can help that. I'm sorry, Naomi, you look like you're about to start. Go ahead.
Yeah, for me as a total beginner on that too, I honestly just Google like, oh, eco-friendly, like sustainable companies. I learned that a lot with something called fast fashion and how like they produce a lot of waste. They underpay their labor. So honestly, just looking up like sustainable companies just on Google, that helped me a lot. But Austin, I think you hopefully you have more.
Oh no, honestly, like this is like looking for those keywords. So yeah, if you do your Google research, you can definitely find the proper products. But say you're in just like inside of a grocery store, right? Typically, things that say organic on them. I mean, I'm not going to get into organics and GMOs, but organic, to be classified as organic, goes through pretty rigorous certifying, which includes being sustainable and fair trade. Typically, at least I know as it pertains to chicken eggs, that's for sure like how that works. So also keywords like fair trade, sustainable, and typically companies are, especially now and here in California, it'll be right on the package. Like it'll say like, oh, like committed to providing 15% of profits towards like land and resource management or something, you know, like stuff like that. It may just take a little bit of more time, like kind of like looking at your products that you normally buy versus the ones that are next to them.
I just wanted to add one last detail onto that is I know that a lot of the time the more sustainable products are a little bit more expensive. And so it can kind of be a deterrent for some folks. And, you know, there's some government assistance programs that don't actually cover some of these products. But if anyone has the ability to consider it an investment in our global future, in the health of our global future, because what we're doing is paying a little bit extra to make sure that our earth stays healthy, that our neighbors are being treated fairly, that the animals that we're, you know, sharing resources from, however you want to put that they're also being treated humanely. So that's a real investment, and that's something that's yes, it's expensive, but the future of our humanity depends on us investing in that. So I just wanted to add that point.
Yeah, another thing that I wanted to add, sorry if I cut someone, is that you can also look into the life cycle of your product. There are some companies that actually encourage like a longer life cycle for their products, and I think that's great. And other companies, they actually want you to buy it faster, which it makes more trash in the end. So that will be one thing that you can look into. I mean, there are companies that they have a outsourcing where like other companies come into their company and they do research on how they, like the whole process of creating their products, and they rate them. they rate like their impact on like the recycling, and it's a whole study. And the companies that are doing this, they want to put it out there so people know that they are doing the right things with their products. So that's one thing. I remember it because I have like a reusable mug that's called Keep Cup that I really like. It's not an advertisement, but they actually, if you go into their website, you can see how they explain the whole process on where they get their glass, where they get the plastic, and if you break it, you can get replacements. So that company actually encouraged you to reuse and not to really buy it again, but to extend the life product of what they're offering. So I think that's a great idea, instead of like having a linear economy, like reusing it. Also, as Deanne mentioned, we don't really have to buy anything to be sustainable. I want to use like my grandma as an example, and she always like reuses stuff, and she has done this like since the beginning. Like she reuses, I don't know, things containers. So we can be sustainable in our own ways, like maybe just bringing our own bags to the grocery store, maybe not buying like bottled water and carrying like a reusable water bottle. So there are different ways where we can have an impact, not only like buying. So if we don't have the means, maybe at this moment, like in buying power, there are other ways where we can definitely have an impact, like voting, volunteering, or maybe reusing stuff. So don't feel discouraged. And like, creating your own relationship with nature, also like just taking a walk in your neighborhood and getting involved. That's a great start too.
Oh, well, what I can say is that this presentation has been phenomenal. And in all honesty, I know the viewers that are watching have learned a lot, just like myself. And the way I'd like to end with, if you could think of one thing, each of you, if you don't mind, like what would your challenge be to another student? Just to like challenge them to do what to help the environment.
I'll go first on that. I say, let's have a challenge that doesn't require any financial resources. Let's make a challenge to reduce our plastic use for, let's say, a semester, for 3 months, for 6 months. Let's say 6 months, let's reduce our plastic use. So when you go to the store and you see a small shampoo bottle in plastic versus a large shampoo bottle in plastic, go for the large one. You'll save, there's less plastic being used, there's less transportation. And so look for plastic free or reducing plastic. There's also, I've switched my family over to shampoo bars, plastic free. So that maybe that can be a challenge.
I believe similarly that Dr. Levy was saying that would not cost you any money is recycling, if you're able to try to do that. It's not as, some people will say it's not as good as it used to be, but I don't have nearly enough data to say that's true or not. But something you can do, because most things that you buy, say on like Amazon, very consumerist culture here in the United States, and everything comes in like packed in thousands of bags of plastic and all of that, and like styrofoam. All of these things are recyclable. So if you can, like, take a little bit of extra time to separate those things and take them to like a recycling center, if you don't have like a route that does that, that's something that you could do like for free. If you can do it like on your way to work or something like that, or just making like, different purchases that might, make the power of your dollar go a different way. But like I said, financial commitments can be dicey, especially in the COVID world.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would, like I said, I think developing your relationship, if you think that you don't have one, like I said, you can take a stroll in your neighborhood, maybe picking trash in your walk, or just taking the moment to see what's around you. Because for example, I'm going to use my husband, but he walks my dog and he's like looking at his phone. all the time. And I'm like, wait, haven't you seen like the other looked like a woodpecker that I've never seen before? And I was amazed, and he was like, what? Like he didn't even. So what I'm saying by developing a relationship with nature is like maybe take a walk outside, don't look at your phone. If it's for 5 minutes, look what's on your environment, like what trees are there, what birds. This might help you get a better relationship, and you might notice that you will actually start getting, a sense of connection. And I don't know, if you start looking at a tree and maybe you like it, or you like a bird, then maybe it will spark an interest to get more information about the topic. And then that's how you start, getting more involved. It doesn't cost you anything, just time. And it doesn't have to be like a lot of time. You can start like little by little.
Thank you so much. Anybody else?
I have a couple things. So I just wanted to shout out to Chris in the chat talking about companies looking into employing corporate social responsibility. I know that one company off the top of my head is Patagonia, but making sure that the companies that we are supporting are actually doing what we want in our society. And I was just going to encourage folks, instead of like immediately jumping to Amazon for everything, there's actually so many other options out there that help benefit not only the workers and a more sustainable world, but also maybe a lot closer. Check out Craigslist. There's like all of these different options that if we can be a little bit more creative and really change the world with our buying power. And then a comment is to try to have at least like one vegetarian or vegan meal a week. Meat has a lot of carbon footprint sway, so I would just put a light shout out for that. Just trying it out. It's challenging at first, but if you're inventive, you can try. You'll realize that some of your favorite foods are actually vegetarian, like mac and cheese. So.
And a fun data point is like 25% of the carbon that we put into the atmosphere comes from industrialized agriculture too. So that's why usually buying from local farms is better for the environment than just buying some regular like extra value like chicken that's like way too big. I know it's a lot of food for cheap, but like they're the bigger proponents of adding carbon to the atmosphere, like human carbon addition to the atmosphere.
I also want to add something to definitely hit up one of those local organizations to get involved. At least one, try one, get involved, see how it feels for, and then later on, and if you can do like 2 or 3 more, then definitely, because the more activists that we get for environmental justice, the more power we're gonna definitely get in our hands to go to politics and tell them that we definitely need a change.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, like, get involved, do beach cleanups, do cleanups in general around your neighborhood.
And that brings me to our, we have a biannual week of service where we do a lot of that. And many of you are there all the time. I know SACNAS shows up with the SACNAS t-shirts, even though I give t-shirts out for coming. And oh, there you go. Danny right there, she's modeling. There you go. Oh, and Shalaya too. That's nice. So I can't wait till we're able to move past COVID so we can go back and doing those kinds of things. The other thing I wanted to say is for the viewers out there, so for the challenges that you've heard from our SACNAS extraordinary students and advisor, circle back with them. They are. Can somebody say what I know you guys have a really good social media presence, but how could students that aren't involved, like who could they contact here to get involved?
I think Diani is going to share our, we have a QR code that will link you to all our social media. And there you go. And we also, there's our Gmail. So if you're interested in attending one of our meetings or just seeing what we're up to, please send us an email or check that QR code, follow us on social media, or contact any of us, really.
And so there on our website at San Diego City College, sdcity.edu/student clubs, there's a list of clubs. And if you scroll down in alpha order, there's SACNAS there. And you'll see Dr. Levy's information along with Deani as the president. So you can email them and get in contact with them. It's very, I want to give a shout out to your former ICC representative, Chris Isidoro, and ASG alumnus. So I see he's been setting the world on fire watching. And so good to see you. And also Joshua, that was part of SACNAS. That was part of, I think his last name was Tenorio, that he was part of ASG, and he was holding us up to, collecting those plastics and aluminums and then recycling them to put money back into the students. So y'all do such a great job at City. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your presentation. It's been most enlightening, and wishing you all future success. Continue your award-winning style of presentation, your research, and I wish you all the very best in your future endeavors.
Thank you very
so
much, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So with that, we will go ahead and say good night to you. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Lori Oldham with the Office of Student Affairs. Thanking you for showing today. Have a great rest of your afternoon.